So today, installing these Figs rear toe links on a SC400. Can also go on a SC300. So first thing I'm going to be covering is, and I'll probably have this out of order, chop it up, edit it afterwards. First thing I'm going to cover is removal of the old toe link. So these are some of the things you may need, some of them you might not. I already did the other side. I'm just trying to show this side. Can't remember what I used. It was about a week ago. So yeah. So essentially, if I can get a light on it, it might be a little dark. Here is the toe link for the rear. It connects right here, up there. That's how they control the toe setting in the rear. One thing I need from over here, actually, paint, because I like to mark where the old cam, the cam bolt adjuster, that'll hopefully brighten it up if it can maintain a connection. This thing kind of sucks. The cord does, not the light. Let me make sure this is angled all right. Okay, so what I do first is I come up in here and that's control arm. There we go. You can see it right there. I may end up having to zoom in when I'm editing. So normally you should have a brush to do this, but I'm just making do with what I have right here. Make some marks that you can match up. The more precise you can be, the better. If you use multiple marks, that's better. You're still gonna definitely want to get an alignment after that, but as you can see, which again I may have to zoom in, I have 3 marks up there. Move this forward. I have 3 marks up there to match up on the cam, just for reference later. So Figs says on the toe links you want that cam rotated as close in as possible to bring the arm in as far as possible when you install it, to help with bump deflection, toe control. As your suspension moves up and down, your toe changes. The longer that arm is, the less toe change you'll have on bump and droop. So so now that that's marked up, first thing I want to do is, I think it's a 17 mil. And come up over here. All right, turn this off now. You can see there is a nut on the other side there. You got to break loose. So I'm just gonna use my breaker bar, come back around from the correct side. Might be a little awkward to see, but I have that breaker bar on there and the 17 mil socket. Shouldn't be too bad. Yep, just like that. Easy. At least mine was. You can see it right there. So now it can come in, flex head. Might not even need a flex head, but just cause. If I can turn it the right way. Make sure I got this in frame. Yep. Also, I recommend jacking the car up as high as you can get it, just so you have more headroom down in here. That should be finger loose now. Yep. Alright, there you go. So that nut is off. Now, if you have a hammer, you can hit it with a hammer. If you got a ball joint tool, you can use a ball joint tool. I don't think I'm really gonna bother, because I'm not reusing these reusing these toe links, so I don't really care. So you're using the hammer method, sorta hit it a few times. You can hit the knuckle. Then I have to use the ball joint tool, which is fine. Turn this light on. If I can even get the damn thing in there. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I think the ball joint tool is a, nope, not a 19 mil. See, I got a 21 mil here. Let's see if this works. 21 mil is too small. It's messy as shit in here, so I do apologize for that. I'm just gonna use a crescent wrench or adjustable wrench. There we go. I'm just going to the other side. See the way over here. Just like the wrong way. There we go. So you could just make it with the hammer and break the desk. But you can work smarter, you can work harder. And taking the time to use a tool can help. And come around the other side. And it will make a loud ass bang. Funny. Like I said, it'll make a loud ass bang when it lets go. Loud ass bang. Loud as but it should be loose now. Yep, that's loose now. So now you can take two 19s, two wrenches, or a breaker bar actually, if you want. What I do is, or what you do is come up under here, make sure this is angled all right. Put a breaker bar on the nut end, put a wrench on the other up. And this was another thing, the brake lines will get in the way, and also an exhaust hanger, so I might as well get all that out of the way now. Alright, so get all your shit, slide all your shit out the way that you have under the car, like me. Angle your camera and pray that your doesn't overheat, because you know it will. It's kind of so you have this 12mm holding the park and brake line on. There we go, that's off, so that helps that move out the way so you can access it. And then there is also a the exhaust hanger. The exhaust itself will get in the way, so you can get an extension, 12mm socket. Ah, shit. And then you might not be able to see it, but it's up in there where the ratchet, or where the socket's now going. It's just a 12mm. Just way up under there. Hopefully your shit's not rusty, but this is a mainly Florida car, so mine's not. Stock exhaust and all that. So that's one of the nuts loose, and there is another one. It's sort of right there. You might be able to see it. So, ratcheting wrench would be your friend here. Make sure it's going the right way. You can just stick that on there. And I will mention now, reinstall of these things can be kind of annoying, getting them to line up properly, but nothing we can't handle. And then boom. So suddenly all that stuff is loose now, which is essential to being able to reach and also get the bolt out. So going back, 19mm on the breaker bar, 19mm wrench. and then you just put one on one side of the bolt. You can't see it, but it's on the back there. Make sure the camera's angled correctly again. And then breaker bar. And then brace this while you push up on the breaker bar. Oh, god damn. Might take some effort. Oh, I think I got it. Broke it loose at least. I started to. Here's another tool. Once I can get it in frame. Extendable ratchet. So honestly, this is so tight, I don't really need that 19 mil on there, or I don't need the wrench on the other side, because I'm able to just loosen it up like this. There we go. Extendable ratchet, really nice. And boom, you got your nut off. Set those to the side. You got a little washer here, and then the plate thing back there. And then you can take, I like to take a ball peen hammer like this, and then sort of bang that bolt through the other side, and then that plate came off. This one, I don't know if you call it there. And then you can see now why we dropped the exhaust, or at least move it out of the way, because this bolt needs to slide out. And set that to the side, and would you look at that? It's now free. So now come back up here, and then you take the hammer, go to bang it out, and then it's loose on that end. Come back under here, bang out that end. There you go. Toe link removed. Not hard. If you have the right tools, really easy. So all in all, I used pretty much everything I had over here. 12 mil, 17 mil, the extension, wrench, ball joint tool, breaker bar, extendable ratchet, ball peen hammer, my big hammer, which is behind me, big hammer, and just like that. And yeah, you can see the play right there. So if I lock it tight, you can actually see the see how that's moving in and out. So because it's mounted like that, that in and out motion that the wheel has translates into the suspension being able to move like that. Move it like that. It can feel like the rear end of the car is sort of dancing, moving side to side. For me, in my 98, because I got a 98, and that's a 98 SC300, 92 SC400. In that car, I think it was this side, maybe it was the other, I don't know. Anytime I'd make a left-hand turn, you could feel the rear end. Making a right-hand turn, you could feel the rear end going side and side. It's sketchy, really sketchy. Almost lost control of the car when it first happened. I was going probably 70, 80 through a corner, and the rear end just, ooh. You'll know it when you feel it. But preferably, preventative maintenance. Replace it before it becomes a problem, before it kills you. So, that was disassembly. I'll probably make another video probably tomorrow covering install, edit it, chop it up, make it all look nice, whatnot. But yeah, that's removal of the stock rear toe link on a 1992 to 1991 Soarer to 2000 Soarer, or 92 SC300 or SC400 to a 2000 SC300 400. You know it. JZZ30, UZZ30, JZZ31, UZZ31. You know it. You wouldn't be doing this if you didn't know what you're talking about. Yep, there you go. So I'm gonna be installing Figs rear toe links for a 1992 SC400. So I'm filming things sort of out of order because I'm not used to recording. I'll take that off for now and put that back on later if necessary. But anyways, 92 SC400. This also applies to SC300. This is my 92, that's my 98. But these parts are going on the 92. So, just an overview, briefly. So, here it is. So I'm gonna walk over to the applicable side of the car. So I already covered disassembly, but that was earlier. As an overview or review, that's the inner, this is the outer. One thing I learned the sort of hard way, inner, you'll see here, normally you'd want to turn it counterclockwise to loosen it, right? Inner is, as you can see, left hand thread. So as I spin that clockwise, it actually comes out. If you look closely at the threads, you can see that. See how they ascend to the left? That means it's left hand thread. I might have misspoke. Right, left hand thread, turn it clockwise to unthread. Counterclockwise, threads it in. Outer end is conventional right hand thread. Counterclockwise to loosen, clockwise to tighten. So make sure you keep that in mind. I destroyed one of these toe links by not knowing that. Didn't know it, and I used a pipe wrench on it. That pipe wrench, and destroyed it. Oh, yeah, destroyed it. So make sure you keep that in mind. I need to cut this off. You could argue that you could cut this off later, but I'm just gonna cut it now. I already did one side This will be the hopefully shorter install video. I already recorded the other side, but it came out really long, and I learned a lot during that process that I feel I can turn that 2-hour long video or section into a much shorter time frame. So what I did first was I made sure these were relatively equal in terms of thread engagement, and that seemed as if it'd probably help quite a bit. So you can see that has that amount of thread and that has that amount of thread. So, oh, wrong way. But don't bottom it out, because then you'll end up in trouble. So the nuts are bottomed out on the rod end. I can see 1, 2, 3 thread, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can probably go in a smidge. Keep them parallel with each other. On the SC chassis, these rod ends, or the linkages, they are parallel with each other, and they're not 90 degrees out like that, like they would be on an IS300. On an IS300, the linkages are, I think, that or sort orientation. SC chassis is not. It's not like that. The instructions on the website tell you to make sure these are 90 degrees out from each other. Doesn't apply for the SC chassis. That may also apply for Supra Mark IV. But all I know is in this chassis they are in line, parallel, not perpendicular. So back to the task at hand. So once I have them perpendicular to each other with about the same amount of thread engagement, I can then go back, tighten that down, tighten this down. And a trick from my last install that I think I'm going to try out this time is to get this all lined up prior to install, because you will see as you try to install, these rod ends will want to clock themselves in different directions, and then it can be a bit of a pain to get everything lined back up. So I'm just gonna do that now. I'll probably still have to adjust it later, but if I get it handled now, or at least get them partially tightened now, it may save me some headache later. So you want to rotate them into tight. The rod end will rotate with that nut. So a trick is to have it misaligned first. If you can see, they're not parallel with each other. So you can have it misaligned, and then as you tighten it, it'll lock up like that. And that can help you out a little bit. Or you can do what Figs recommends. Take a wrench, and the wrench will go on the rod end. As you can see here, let me make sure it's in shot. Rod end. Wrench goes on the rod end. I like to use a 15. Where's my 15? I like to use a 15 on the rod end just because the 14 sort of it's a little bit tight. So here's my 15. It's a little bit too tight. So you can use a rod end. I'm showing you this now because it's easier to understand outside of the car, or when it's not on the car. You can use a rod end, or wrench, sorry, to keep the rod end in place. This is on the car, imagine it's on the car, and use the combination wrench or adjustable wrench. Use a real wrench if possible. I just don't have the right size. One wrench to hold it, the rod in place, and the other to tighten the nut down. Again, if you have the right size wrench, use it. I don't have one that fits that fits this nut. I need to go a little bit more. I think I accidentally loosened that one. So you want to rotate into tight so you can back that off a little bit, snug it back down, and then that wasn't enough, so I can back that off a little bit. Just play around with it, you'll eventually understand. You'll see what I mean once you've messed around with it enough. But you want those perpendicular, or parallel, not perpendicular. On the SC chassis, that is. You want them parallel. Oh, and those spacers will come off. Alright, I'm just going to do it on the car. Turns out it's probably easier to do that, or at least seemed easier that way when I did it last time. So, last time I found out that torquing down the outer end is probably easier to do first. Let me get my headlamp. And you'll see why it's easier to do the outer first. So first off, you want to make sure everything can go in relatively smoothly. You can't have this positioned incorrectly or else you'll run into issues later. So gotta make sure it's set up in a way So, on the other side, what I ended up having to do, I actually ended up doing it on this side, but this is my second attempt at this. I did have to pry on the subframe a little bit to get this one to slide in. The other side I didn't. I was able to get away with just using the rubber mallet. Oh, it's going in. So, to help keep everything in place, I'll tighten this down. I have it backwards. No, do I? No, I don't. So let's go grab. It's a 19. So stock is 17. This is a 19. And then I think a 14 on the shank. So you'll run into the typical issue that everybody has with joints, where it wants to spin, but I don't know if you can see it. There's flat spots on the shank. Let me make sure it's in frame. On the shank there's some flat spots. Just trust me. Never mind, don't trust me. Now that I've done the install and I'm reviewing the footage, I realize you really couldn't see what I was talking about. If you can see right there, let me turn the light down. If I can get you in close enough, you can see that shank. There is flat spots on it that you can get a wrench on. Not sure if the camera will pick it up. There's a flat spot there and a flat spot on the back side that you can get your wrench on, which is what I'm doing at this point in the video. Also, post install, this gap that you see here is fine. If you look on the website, it says gap okay. This gap is totally fine. It is how it's supposed to be. Just thought I'd clarify that. Wasn't too clear in the video. Couldn't really see what I was doing. Anyways, back to editing the video. Hopefully you can stick your wrench on those flat spots. So it looks like 14 wasn't big enough. And one of my spacers just rolled away on me. So I'll have to go get that. Yeah, 14 wasn't big enough. I'll grab my 15 while I'm out here. Grab my grab this. So let's see, was this the right size on the shank? No, it wasn't. So 17 mil, hopefully. Way too big. Back to my 15 mil. $15 mil it is, I guess. It's gonna have to be 16 mil, probably be ideal. So as you can see, it's already spinning the shank. So take your 15. Get it onto that shank. It's kind of tight, but that'll at least allow you to hold it in place while you torque this in there. I'm pretty much gone to the end of what the socket can handle, so let me find my 19. There is 19. Ugh. it should, yep, it has enough bite to it that I don't need the anymore, the socket. All right, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing up here. Let me make sure they can't. There we go. All right, so as you can see, I may have to adjust a little bit. So basically back to square one in terms of tightening these down, but I'm gonna have to. So this is the inner end, so clockwise to loosen that nut. And then on the outer, I'm working from below it, so from this orientation it'll be clockwise to loosen. And since it's bunched up against this, what I'm gonna have to do is I guess I can bottom out the other end. And then there we go. So that end down there is loosened. No, I don't want to be doing that. We're losing that thread depth that I was talking about earlier, so what I need to do, I'm gonna have to on this end thread it in a little bit. Thread that end in a little bit, and then take those spacers, everything slid up into there. So you can see it's really far out. So what I may do is press on the hub to pull it in, or to pull it out, I should say. So now let me get all the bolts and hardware. Got the eccentric bolt, washer. Don't forget the nut. And the nut, of course, is going to be in the inconvenient location. So you're feeding it in from the front of the car to the back. All right, I got that through. Hopefully you can see that. And then on this edge, you got the eccentric plate. I might have to push on the, yep, there we go. And then the washer, wherever, there it is. Okay. Then the washer will go right there. And the nut goes on. Just make sure everything's going in. All right, and then take 19 mil socket, 19 mil wrench. Put the wrench in the inconvenient area and then socket on the more convenient area. Tighten those down a bit. If you look closely, you might have been able to see the gap there closing. It's probably the mounting bracket for the subframe flexing a little bit, which is because I pried these two ears out a bit, probably a bit more than I should have, admittedly. So Figs states that what you want to do is have this set up to where the mounting surface is as far inwards as it can go. Let me loosen this up a bit. So you can see, so I move this wrench, it'll spin that cam plate. Should probably tighten that back up a little bit actually. So as I rotate that nut, it'll rotate that cam what you want it to do. What I'm trying to force it to do is position it to where the rod end is as far in as it can go. Like that right there. Once you have it there, hold that wrench in place over here with your socket. Tighten it down. There we go. And that's not torque to spec. That's just me tightening it down for right now. And then, now that that's taken care of, you can see how you adjust your toe. So, because this is left-hand thread, because that down there is right-hand thread, you can see how you'll be adjusting your toe, because instead of threading the rod threading itself between the two rod ends, if they are both the same thread direction, as you rotate this as so, you are achieving toe out, or yeah, toe out, because that's the front of the car. You can see it's threading itself away from there, but also away from there. If you rotate it this way, it's towing in. And that's your explanation of how to adjust your toe now. That's not the tricky part. The tricky part is tightening down these nuts while keeping the rod ends parallel to each other. So as you can see, this one's cocked up that way, the other one's cocked really far the other way. You don't want that, because what will happen is as you're traveling over bumps and stuff, that will allow, let me demonstrate, that'll allow this rod end, make sure this is in frame, it'll allow this rod end to make contact with those spacers right there. You see that? And that can cause premature wear and or failure. And I'm more worried about failure than premature wear. Failure means you're going to lose control of the car. So you want to keep those as parallel to each other as possible on this chassis. On IS300, this outer mount is actually pointing down. So you would want them 90 degrees from each other. On this chassis, they are parallel. So now what I'm going to try to do, easier said than done, is keep them parallel to each other while I tighten down these nuts. So the way you accomplish that is, and Fig says this on the information page for the rod ends, you put a wrench on there, and then as I was showing you earlier, your other wrench on the nut. So one thing I learned from doing the other side is I want to do the inner one first, because it's easier to make your final adjustments on the inner. I might have said that backwards. You want to do your outer first. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to first attempt to see what I can do using just the wrench. Let me adjust up this way so I can be a little bit more underneath of it. So since I'm snugging this nut against the tube, and I'm looking down at the nut, I'm rotating it counterclockwise to snug it up against the tube. You're not snugging it up against the rod, and you're snugging it up against the tube. So watch as I do that. You can see right there, that rod end is wanting to rotate. So what he states is you can hold it with a wrench to keep the rod end as so, while you tighten down with, for me, the shitty adjustable wrench. So I will attempt that now. And I may be using my adjustable wrench incorrectly. So if I am, please correct me in the comments, because I know there's a right and wrong way to use them, the direction that you turn in. And it's easier to notice that difference with the pipe wrench. When I use the pipe wrench, I know for certain when I'm turning it the wrong way, but these adjustable wrenches, honestly, I don't know. So I'm gonna take this, hold that in place where it should be. It's gonna wanna, that's the wrong way. It's gonna wanna turn that way, so I need to snug it or hold it in place with this wrench here. Keep a close eye on it. Don't look at the wrenches, look at the rod end. So I definitely want to go a little tighter. Like I said, use the right tool, don't use these shitty adjustable wrenches. They'll cause you problems like I'm having right now. I can't get it unstuck. So I just wiggle it off, I guess. God, I hate these fucking things. So bring that back to where it needs to be, right about there, at its midway point. And come back. I want I get a little bit tighter. For all I know, maybe that's the correct way to use a pipe wrench. So as I tighten that, you can see right there it wanted to rotate that rod end. So again, you don't want to let it do that. You want to brace it with a wrench and then find that midway point. Right about there. And then keep an eye on the rod end, not the wrenches again. And there we go. All right, and you will be able to rotate this, don't worry about that. So now that I did that end, this end, you're not going to be fighting against just this end up here. You're going to be fighting against the end down there wanting to rotate as well. So this is where it gets even more tricky. I want to tighten this counterclockwise to tighten the nut down into the tube, right? So if I am rotating this counterclockwise to tighten it down into the tube, this rod end is gonna want to cock sideways like that, you see? So I can't let it do that. What I need to do is hold it steady in the opposite direction. And what will happen is, as I tighten this nut down, the entire rod or tube assembly is going to rotate with it. And then the outer one will be misaligned, but that's something we can correct just little by little. So right now you see that one's all cocked off to the side and this one is cocked off in the other direction. So what I need to do is loosen this back up by rotating it clockwise. Right, and then getting that outer one straightened out. Come back up here, straighten this out. And what I can do to help myself is, again, rotate into tight. So I have that one cocked off to the side, so let's see how this works out. As I tighten this, it's going to want to rotate that one into where it needs to be. So let's see how that works out. If I put my wrench here, and I brace my rod end as so. So you may or may not be able to see it, but I'm looking at the outer rod end. So now they are straight. I need to tighten I need to tighten this nut more because it's still loose. That's straight down there. This is more or less straight. I could go a little bit straighter with it. Right about there. But now that one down there is not straight. So you see the dilemma? They want to rotate together when they want to rotate together, not when you want them to. And they won't rotate individually when you want them to. You're always going to be fighting this. Again, it'd be easier if these were hexagonal and you could get a wrench on them, but I'm sure in terms of strength, it's much stronger to have them perfectly tubular along the whole thing. So that one is pointed that way, this one's pointed that way. So I need to do what I can do is come over here, grab my vice grips. Oh, there it is. That's where this thing can come into play. Ow. So you put that over there. You take your vice grips. I recommend having better vice grips than the ones I have. Do as I say, not as I do. I need to go tighter. That's not tight enough, I can already tell. Alright, so I'm going to come up here, straighten that rod end without turning the whole tube, make these more perpendicular like they should be. And then come here, this wrench, and tighten. So right now they're perpendicular. So I can take the whole tube, rotate them like that, and then now that they're both cocked off to the side, I can take this, put these back on there. So you can see where you're essentially juggling constantly. Little by little, you just get closer and closer. It's like Dark Souls or some shit. So they're pretty parallel. I just need to go tighter and tighter. So now they are misaligned again. So where did my oh, it's already on there. Let's go even tighter with this. Oh, that's not tight enough. Might even have them on backwards. There we go. It's not tight enough. Oh, I was going the wrong way. There we go. That's not tight enough. I know for a fact that's not going to be tight enough. Oh, that's too tight for me. Oh, that's also too tight. There we go. So let's see if that's tight enough to keep everything else in place while I rotate that. Doesn't seem like it. They're almost there. They're getting close. But I do want this nut tighter to the tube. That's pretty damn close. It might be good right there. Maybe. Yep, there we go. So I'm pretty content with that. This nut is pretty tight. That nut down there is pretty tight. So what I can then do is come back up here, find my 19mm wrench again. Verify that this is where I want it. Which it is. Yep. And then you just torque that to spec, which I'll be doing later, and then torque this to spec down here, which I'll also be doing later. And then install is complete. You'll likely need an alignment. So again, to recap, to align, you're gonna essentially have to do half of that all over again. You have to loosen these nuts and then rotate this to adjust your toe. And then of course you're gonna have to go back and make sure that these rod ends are straight, which is most of this battle, but I think we can handle. And again, you got your anti-tamper nut. And I may have mentioned this earlier, but do not touch this one. Don't adjust this one. When you're tightening down to this, grab it by the shank. Don't grab it by this nut. This nut holds the stack of spacers on. You can put this cap back on there if you want. In my opinion, I can't imagine it staying on long term. It'll probably fall off. So I might put it on there. If it falls off on the road, no big deal. I think I'll be all right. Don't tell the EPA that though. But yeah, that should cover everything. After this, you would just, again, torque to spec. You'd come back up here, reinstall your exhaust hanger back up into where it needs to go, up there, and then your parking brake line comes back up right in there, and then put your wheel back on, set the car down, go get it aligned, or align it yourself using one of those methods that are out there on the internet on how to do your own DIY alignments. If you know someone that would be able to handle doing an alignment on some special toe links, then I recommend going through them, because they are going to want to align the car using those eccentric bolts. But the reason you have those eccentric bolts keeping the toe link in as far as possible is because as your car, your suspension droops and bumps, toe changes. Having a longer arm makes it so that you don't have as much toe change as the suspension bumps, droops, etc. Now, if you're going for an easy install, you just want to match up the length of this to the length of the toe link assembly, the Figs toe link assembly, and then just get them lined up, install, and then yes, you can align it using those eccentric bolts, but you won't get the benefit of having the long arm, the longest arm possible that can fight the droop and bump deflection. So just keep that in mind. If you want the easy install, go that route. If you want the bump deflection, you're gonna have to have that mount as far in as possible. But yeah, that should cover everything. I showed how to remove, I showed how to install. This side I showed install. I may take clips of that just if there's any information in there that I want to use. I recorded this side. This was way easier, way quicker since I did the other side first. If you have any questions or anything, just feel free to ask. Let me know, because I know it's a little weird, a little daunting at first, but I did it, and if I can do it, then you definitely can, because I'm pretty stupid. Hence this, because guess what? Left hand thread and pipe wrench. Tried to loosen it, didn't work out. So this will be a spare for an emergency use, because it's damaged. Don't really trust it too much, but you know, an emergency, maybe I could use that. But yeah, that should cover everything. Have any questions, comments, or anything, just drop them below. Let me know. Tips for me, tips for other people, anything. Make fun of me, tell me I'm stupid, that I don't know how to work on cars. I'm accepting of it all. Anyways, y'all have a good one.